ST, ST.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I got for some reason that kicked me out for a second, but I'm back. Can everybody hear me?
Okay, it's recording.
Okay. So, any questions from this weekend? I know we covered a lot yesterday, and I had a lot to think about last night too. But any questions or comments from this weekend? 'Cause I know I thought about what you said, Charles, too, and then Kathy sort of asked her a question on the heels of it too, and that really played right into understanding who we are at a particular moment and interjecting at the right time, and that was one of the things to practice, and that was right on time yesterday, so I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Yeah. And then tonight, we'll still discuss intuition a little bit, but also, when Pastor talked about just the transitioning from the seven traditional senses, I didn't think we talked a lot about that, but I feel like maybe we need to cover that a little bit too, as far as just because we really kind of, in the physical sense and just in the earthly sense, we've really sort of mastered a lot of those because they are the second nature to us because we're born with them. But I want to touch on that a little bit too, and just kind of go over and go a little deeper into, intuition and how we actually use it compared to our normal life's decision. I think that was one of the questions Pastor left off with yesterday too, is how do we operate day in and day out, and what drives that, what motivates us in that regard. So if there are any questions, I'm gonna start out by going back to that 2 Timothy chapter 3 and 15, and then 4 and 3. Just kind of reading that one more time, just to get a little context of what we're talking about. And so, but yeah, 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 15, and then we'll look at 4 and 3. And I when I wrote these verses down, I tried to really look up and study different chapters in the Bible that talked about, anything that talked about intuition, anything that talked about the actual transition that Jesus made. So first of chapter 3 and 15, it's and from childhood you have known that sacred writings which are able to give you the wisdom that leads to salvation through faith which is in Christ Jesus. And then going down to 4 in the third chapter, for the time will come when they will not endure sound doctrine, but wanting to have their ears tickled, they will accumulate for themselves teachers in accordance to their own desires. And just wanted to kind of read those, because when we really look at, we keep reiterating ourselves, how we really have to go into ourselves. We hadn't touched on the flip side of that, as far as like what happens when you are using bad information to make decisions, and when we, what happens when we're just using our earthly heart a lot of times to make decisions. We touched on it a little bit yesterday, but just the errors that are coming up, the mistakes that we make, you find yourself you fight an uphill battle because you're thinking you're doing the right thing, but the reality is we made a poor decision, and so that's where we're trying to fix mistakes, and then you get bogged down to where you're always trying to fix things, and we get distracted, always being a fixer, instead of that person who's working from internal strength. So when we're always fixing things, that's really external pressure that's coming out, and so we're reacting externally. And that was one of the things that, life just kind of like life comes at you every day. And I talked a little bit yesterday about, and this is a smaller setting, so we really talk about it. So, my mother, I don't know how many people know, she's in a nursing home with dementia, and my grandmother who raised me, I watched her decline because of that. And so, and Pastor and I had a discussion last year just about, you've gone through it before. I had a brother that passed away from brain disease. So it's all these things that you kind of like, you watch people deteriorate from a mental standpoint. And it's almost like the question I've asked myself, like, well, what happens? Because they're kind of like trapped in their own mind. But then this, are you talking to the person that you used to know? And so, but then at the same time, you look at that person and how much they've done for you over the years, the wisdom they've given you, the teachings that they've taught you. And I really started this journey trying to figure out, to make sense of what, dementias, what someone who's kind of lost in their own mind. So I really started that journey because, Kathy, for instance, and I'm just using you as an educator. You've been an educator all these years. So there have been thousands and thousands of kids who've come through your door, and you've taught them, and you've educated them from that period of time that they've interacted with you. And then once they leave, a lot of those kids will think back on lessons that they learned from interacting with you. A lot of those lessons have shaped their lives. And at the same time, part of that, they're seeing things from your perspective. Fortunately for them, it's also an Elohim perspective. But if we think back in our lives and things that shaped us, not saying that people meant us harm or they meant us, any ill will, but there's certain things that are shaped by their experience too. And so that's when I started looking at, okay, well, it's the individual person. We've learned behavior, but I'm also responsible for going down and activating that in myself. And so that's where I instead of just looking at it as something that I could fix on the outside, and quite frankly, you think about, okay, this is happening to people, that I know in front of me. Is there something I should be doing proactively too to kind of combat anything like that potentially? So but the one thing I kept thinking of, I need to go inside and understand myself a little better. And a lot of times our long-term goals, we used to just think like, we have no control over it. What's going to happen is going to happen. But the reality is we do have we can shape our future, but it's always shaped by how we study our past and then the decisions we make, currently. And if we can make those decisions and do things and operate every day as Elohim, and that's when I realized I don't have to worry about what's going to happen to my mind down the line, or if anything, I just need to focus on shaping myself right now and operating in the perspective of Elohim. I mean, it could be I've had dreams, I've had like a ton of deja vu that I just recently I can always think back and see it. So that's where that was sort of the motivation for me, because when you're trying to get a parent in a nursing home, you're fighting the system, it just, it drains you a little bit. It's sort of depressing. It's kind of, you're just like, you can't focus. And then once you finally, you'll get them in a situation where they're set up, then you go through a period of guilt, wondering, what could I have done to what could I have done better? And so I had to really deal with that, last year, and then we have a COVID year, and so that was kind of like where I was, trying to figure out what I needed to do within myself to operate differently instead of trying to be external and reactive and not proactive. Any questions so far or a comment? I didn't want to ramble too long, but that was kind of my motivation of really looking into this lesson.
ST, I'm trying to, I'm going to put this out there and see if you can help with it, because it seemed like you was asking too, when people have problems like that with their mind, and they like they in a different world than we are. And what I mean by that, their mind shape is in a different world than we are. It seemed like when the leopards was here on the earth during the time when Jesus cleansed them, and I don't know that you probably feel like how can we tap in that same type power to regulate those people's mind that we love, and not only them, the ones that's like that. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. So, because the biggest thing for us and the family, especially my kids, they hadn't really seen that happen before. I've seen it before and experienced it, and so I've learned how to, like I said, I went through it one time with my grandmother, and that hurt. Almost like Kathy said yesterday, with now I'm learning how to process it a little differently, because the one thing you get frustrated with that really frustrated me was just the communication changes now, because you're not communicating with them like you used to. And for a while, we say, well, you can't be disconnected from the Father and the Spirit. But, in that situation, I felt a little disconnection because I couldn't communicate like I normally would. And so then you're sitting there, and then I didn't feel the same feeling, that I had, because all along before that, like when my mother lived by herself in Charleston, there were times where I sensed that I needed to, even in the middle of the night, 9 o'clock here in Spartanburg, get up and drive down here, And so I felt like I could feel when something wasn't right. And you don't want to always, this is one thing we'll talk about when we get further down. You don't always want to one thing like intuition, you don't always want to sense the worst either. So you're thinking, okay, well, this could happen. I had people will use the term, I had a bad feeling about this, I had a bad feeling about that. And so when we start, going deeper into the intuition and what it means, the reason we want to operate as Elohim is because that negative intuition does not jump in first and sort of cloud what you need to be seeing. Because sometimes, when you stress and worry, or it tends to not be intuition, because that's not really being based on wisdom. It's just sort of being based on fear. And Kathy talked about fear several years ago. So, I had to get to the point of where, okay, I want this intuition to help me operate as who I am, but I don't want to operate in fear. So I had to walk that fine line too. But you do feel a sense of disconnection when you have a family member going through that and you're trying to communicate and they're kind of in and out of it. And the reason I talked to me and Pastor were talking about it is because a dementia person or someone who's going through that, they live in kind of three worlds at the same time. So there's a fantasy world. They live in the past, and then they have like that present talk. And so you got to kind of like decipher those three worlds and get comfortable with it, because some things they say like, yeah, that happened, but it happened like 30, 40 years ago. And then some things, it's just like they're running together. That's not possible. That didn't happen. Not like she's saying it. And then in the present time, they kind of understand who you are, where you are. They know that something's off, but so just learning all of that and trying to deal with it in that way, that they live in three worlds. But yeah, that it changes you, especially when you get to the point of, okay, man, I'm not communicating like I used to with her, and I felt a little disconnected, but now I can go back and just kind of sense, I sense the energy, I sense the presence, even though I can sit there for an hour and nobody say anything, we're just looking and talking, just, anyway, so it's different now. So that was my way of kind of coping with it. I had to get my daily focus in a different, in a different light. And it's still like not perfect, but I had to go through them stages, I guess, if that makes sense.
It makes sense, basically, because I understand. I remember one time, this happened to Rail, and I don't know if he's on the phone now. Kurt, he was sitting, and so I was watching the whole thing, and Kurt was praying, saying, "Staying focused." Other people was trying to knock Pastor off his focus, but Kurt kept saying, "Stay focused," and I was trying to understand all in the midst of this, and I caught it. And then I just did what Kurt was doing. And like I said, and Rev stayed focused and did what he had to do. So, and you like you were saying, you got to, go into yourself and tell yourself to stay focused.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing too, like I really didn't, that's what came into like the decision part. I in the midst of all of that, and you think about, I thought back to, because Kathy taught a long time before we came out of COVID. Kathy had 3-4 lessons that ran together, and all, and so with all of that going on, we were able to make, good decisions, and I didn't feel like anything was rushed. I feel like they were wise decisions, and everything kind of worked out for the good and how it should have worked out. Even though at sometimes that there's a lot going on with it financially, and there's a lot going on with it, what you have to do about their future, and so I had to get over a lot of that. But some of the things that I'm learning now when we talk about being Elohim and being even keel sometimes, and operating, not making a decision, because there are a lot of times you try to make a decision to like, okay, I'm going to get over, I need to take advantage of this situation because I don't know, I didn't worry about none of that, and just said, okay, I'm just going to operate, and my gut tells me that no matter what somebody's telling me to do illegally or trying to shift things, my intuition kept me focused on, okay, this is the right, I can't see it right now, but this is what I should do. And I really follow that. And a lot of times, like I said, you don't know, you can't see that far down. But then I found myself in the point where I could operate and understand what would be coming down the road in 2 or 3 months, things that I never were able to like see before or anticipate. And that's another word, anticipation, I could anticipate a lot better, if that makes sense. and it's by no means perfect with me, but I just, I had to get to the point where, like, what else can I do? But just worry about everything on the outside, or could I just go in and see if I can put myself in a certain order so that I will be able to receive, be able to operate, be able to just and function. You still got to function daily with everything else going on. So I really put myself in a better position all the way around, and I really didn't realize it until after we really started coming out of COVID, and you look at your job situation and everything else that went on, and nothing had changed, and we had a lot going on, and so it just helped me to kind of like, and that was probably the first time that I, did more meditation, more self-examination in a long time, and just, but it was just not to pray or get anything done, but it was just to quiet everything else around me. And so when everything else was going on, I was able to quiet myself, and do what's right for the family, if that makes sense.
It makes sense.
This is Kathy with the C. My father had full-blown Alzheimer's, and I was 6 years old when he left me and my siblings and my mom. But when he came back, it was 43 years since I seen him. But when he came back to Gaffney, he had it then. But my sister and my brother, they thought he had lost his mind. And I kept telling them he haven't lost his mind. And they said, well, yes, he have. And he was saying things and doing things. And I was like, well, asking, I was saying, Lord, what is wrong with him? Reveal it unto me. And so finally he revealed it to me. He said he has Alzheimer's. And I said, Alzheimer's? I had no education on it whatsoever. Heard about it, but never really experienced it with anybody. And finally I went to him, and he started scaring everybody, wanting to shoot everybody, and I pulled away. But when I pulled away, I had to get my thoughts together and say, what do I do, in a situation like this? He needs somebody. He needs help. Everybody is turning against him because he was afraid. They were afraid of him. But then I heard within myself say, go back. And I said, go back. I said, I can't go back down. That man going to shoot me. And then he said, go back. And I said, okay, Lord, you say go back, so you have to pay the way. And it took me a minute because I had to get my thoughts together. But once he told me to go back, I knew that he would give me the strength. I got my water running in the washing machine if y'all hear it. I knew that he would give me the strength to do what need to be done. And from that day, I took care of my father and my daddy until he died. And I wasn't afraid of him when I went back. But I would leave him there by himself, and he, in his mind, it was telling him that I was going to work on third shift. And I would say, well, Daddy, you stay in here, keep the door locked. He said, okay. He said, I'll be here when you get off from work. So I never told him I wasn't working at the time so that he wouldn't get afraid by himself. He wandered off one time, and he never wandered away because he heard a dog, and it scared him. So he went back. I picked him up. On his way back home, he said, I'm so glad to see you. And from that day, he never wandered off again. So it takes some getting your thoughts together in order to be able to take care of somebody like that. And it's hard. It's hard, especially when it's on one person. But if it wasn't for the strength that I knew that was within me, that it somehow I had to see exactly how much strength I really had, and my thoughts, coming together as to how I was going to be able to handle that. And so it ended up, I took care of him till he died. And then my aunt, she came down, and her daughter's probably on the line. She came down with dementia, and I had to help them through what they were going through with her, in order for them not to just break and, not be able to do anything. So it's a journey, but it takes a lot of thought process and to go through something like that. I'm finished.
No, thank you. I definitely agree. That's why I was like, I don't know why it led me to, like just really looking beyond the senses, because, that's one of the other things I felt like, some of those seven senses, they begin to deteriorate on it. And, I've probably seen it 4 times with people that I know or family. And like I said, first was my grandmother, and everything that I got spiritually initially, I was, talking about it a little bit yesterday, came from her, because I think she was ahead of her time in the sense that we went to a traditional church, Baptist church, but the conversations we had when I was growing up and some of the things she told me, some of it lines up right now with what we talk about now and every day. And so, I kind of focused on that more and just listened to her teachings. And then when you see that person who's been your leader spiritually, deteriorating, I was a little young. I was young, but then I was in my 20s. But I saw it start and end. And then one of my good friends, he was 40. He had what they call frontal lobe, and went through a lot with him because he was getting arrested a lot and nobody knew what was going on with him. But I think he passed away like at 41, 42 of frontal lobe dementia. It was like a year when it got. So, and then my brother died of Benson syndrome, which is like a gray matter in the back of your brain that messed with the sequence of his thinking from step to step, and I dealt with that right before my mom. So then I thought, okay, well, all this can't be happening without me needing to do something, or the message. What was the message for me? And then I thought about, okay, well, am I predisposed for something? And then so that's what really started. Like, okay, well, I need to think about, just think differently. But then, my mom was 3 hours away. So when you have somebody that far away, they got to have help, and they can't, they couldn't be left alone for too long. But, we got away with it as long as we could. But then there's not a lot of help at all. The system is not set up to support us as we age. And you find that out the hard way when you're trying to get help. There ain't a lot of help out there. So that was probably more for me. I was probably just feeling helpless because I couldn't, everywhere you turn, it's like, well, we can't, we don't have any support here. Or so, that was the part I think that drove me to like, okay, just, stressing out and trying to figure out what to do. And then you really don't want to do anything because you feel guilty for not being in a situation where you could avoid that, if that makes sense. So it's a lot. It's a lot, and you would think with all that external pressure and this external things pushing on you, you try to fix it. And I was trying to fix it all from the outside, and you running and ripping, doing different things. But then I'm coming to church on Sundays, and you hear, and hey, kingdom principles. You got to do this, and so you get to the point of, okay, I can't fix it from the outside in. I got to start inside first, and really all that did was just quiet my mind so that I could organize my thoughts and get myself pulled together consistently to do it, along with taking care of, my present day responsibility too. So it definitely makes you rethink things, and I'm not a spring chicken anymore. And I'm like, okay, I gotta my mind has got to be quiet, and I've got to have my Charles said the focus. Even if you're not doing a whole lot, it still helped me. And then you still have so much chaos going on top of that. But I've learned, if nothing else, I've learned more patience. But I've also learned to take my daily thoughts out of it, especially when when you're dealing with the dementia situation. You really have to you have to take yourself out of it and be more agreeable and work with them, because you're not gonna reason with them in that sense, but you do want to. If you operate as Elohim would with the baby, it takes you it gives you a little more peace with it. And that's but that was my motive. That's where everything starts someplace. That's where it all started with last year, and I didn't even know I was going to be doing a lesson, but I just did certain things, and if I made a decision to do something, I just could see down the line it was going to work out. It was going to work out, and I could start seeing things kind of shake back together. And I wasn't myself again. I was like a better version of myself, because I felt like you overcame a lot, but you felt like, okay, I really looked back on it, and I said, okay, what could I couldn't have done a lot better. I could have done some things different, but given all the circumstances, it all worked out. And that's when I said that the other day about just the things that we really have to do to get better and sharpen our eighth sense. Was part of it was like reflecting and using your memories. Some of it was intuition, and learning who you are in the moment of crisis and when you need it. I had to learn that a lot. And like when Charles said it yesterday, interjecting. In them situations, when do you interject? When do you say, okay, this is enough, and I got to, tell this person, no, I've got to do this. You got to tell them stop driving. And then, that feeling of connection, because it's a hurt feeling when you feel like you lose that connection with somebody, with your mother. And then you have to kind of you got to deal with it. And then, the other example about using other people's power, I knew a lot of people that went through it before, and I didn't have like some of the patience that they had, but I learned from them. And I just, like I said, I did a lot of stuff and I didn't realize what I was doing to actually get myself in a better situation mentally, but it did. I mean, the last thing I thought was, okay, the only way I can help is to get myself more focused and lined up better, and instead of trying to call attorneys and call doctors and move things around, because if you trying to help somebody, and I think Kathy or Rev said this before in the past too, you're not gonna be able to help anybody until you get yourself in the situation that you need to be in. So, but that was my motivation for this lesson, or what, like I said, wasn't even thinking about being a lesson, but just trying to get that mental part of it. Okay, what happens because eventually we're gonna walk a little slower, we're gonna lose some hearing, lose some sight, but we've mastered all those 7 earthly, what I call senses. So what's gonna be our strongest sense, and that's where the 8th sense comes in. So when we hurt, when we're down, when you're not seeing as well, you're not hearing as well, you got vertigo, you got a concussion like Rev had from the accident, that 8th sense, that additional sense needs to be our strongest sense, because then it helps you rise above it. When your mind is quiet, it helps you rise above the pain, above anything that can be thrown at you. And that's where I started studying this and just tried to focus on one thing, and I just kept saying, okay, and then you realize that somebody cannot. I couldn't tell you how Kathy Cedar, I couldn't tell you everything that went on with your father. You had to be in the middle of that for yourself, and so that's why we all have a part of this journey that at some point we're going to have to walk alone, not walk alone without spiritual guidance without Elohim within us, but walk alone in the sense that in order for us to develop and mature, we're gonna have to force ourselves to grow. So we got to make that uncomfortable walk by ourselves. We're never alone in that sense, as far as the Father's not leaving us alone. But in order to tighten up that creation, that level that the Creator has with us, it's a self journey that you go on by yourself. And then once you get to a certain level, your connection with everybody else who's also made that same journey, it becomes stronger. Because we had been together for a year and a half now, almost 2 years, but we've gotten stronger as a body, and it's just because the phone connection is actually easier than, because we never get together this much in person, but the phone connection it's so much easier to call in. I like being face to face and talking and seeing people smile, but at the same time, we do get together more now because our connection is there. I don't know if that's a good example of it, but it does help.
SG.
Yeah. Yes.
This is Audrey. How's everybody?
Hey, good. I made a ramble there.
I have kind of a, question, comment, whatever.
Sure.
Because while you were talking, I really was starting to feel like, and not to take away from what you've gone through with your mother and then Kathy with her father, but it sounds exactly like our experiences with people who are so caught up in religion and religious doctrine. And I'm going to use Ron's term here. I have a supposition that when people are caught up in religious doctrine or religion itself, it seems to me, and I could see it when you were talking, that's kind of like a dementia, because they live in that church world. They focus on the past. They really don't have any capacity for self-reflection. You can't communicate with them like you used to be able to, because somehow that connection has been broken. And you can't reason with them. So, and it's like everything they sort of believe is a little bit counterintuitive to the teachings of Jesus. And then on top of that, that inability to do that self-examination, to reflect, to meditate. They don't have even though they have the ability, they don't take on the capacity of looking inside themselves or meditating and beginning to learn who they are, and in effect come to balance themselves so that they can then deal with other things. So I thought it was a perfect analogy, the dementia in terms of religious doctrine. So when we start to deal with ourselves and we take that time to reflect, to meditate, to know who we are, because we got to get our minds right to be able to go among them. So when we take that time to balance ourselves, we are better prepared and better able to deal with the situation, as you were saying.
No, yeah, absolutely. And that's what you described was that was the Colossians verse we said yesterday too, because one of the things that you deal with that, and I mean, and it wasn't just like, like, did I mind going? I drive a lot anyway, but it wasn't you get tired, but the thing that makes you that clogs you up or clogs everything up is just like you constantly now, like, okay, now I'm thinking about this every day, like, okay, what do I have to do? What do I need to do? It's just like always, you're thinking, okay, and it's like you're not feeling sorry for yourself, but it clogs you up. It gets you distracted from, like you said, it's almost like a different type of doctrine, and it just and then I've always heard, like one of the things was always told me, like whatever you're looking for and put your focus on, you're gonna find it. If you were told that, hey, look for something brown in this room, you're gonna look until you find something brown. And so then that's always a negative or a positive, but it just, like you said, it can be a detriment if you let it. And like you said, religion will trap you into that, because people were still, I don't want to get into all the pre-needs and all that stuff you have to set up, but I don't go to her church and dealing with a pre-need situation there was just different. I'll put it like that. But then you read that Colossians, that second Colossians 8 and 9, which you just read, Audrey. What you just said was, see to it that no one takes you captive through philosophy and empty deception. And that's totally what Paul and these guys were writing to. They were gearing up towards the church, because that taking you captive through philosophy, I mean, you're believing what they're telling you, and that's just enslaving you, taking you captive, because you're trying so hard to be what the doctrine says you should be at a given point in time.
Right, instead of being who the Creator says you are.
Right, and the empty deception, and that's why when I said at the Charles yesterday, like at the point in time, doctrine will have you say, okay, Audrey, you just need to go in your closet and pray, and all this is going on around you, but just pray and tithe, and it's going to be all right. And you just got to have faith. So they just said, Audrey, at this point you got to do, and so that's what philosophy and doctrine tells you to do in the empty deception. But that's not what you need to be at that appointed time. And sometimes we have to be a caregiver. Sometimes we have to be a listener. And that's why it's so important that in order to get to that level, we really have to be intuitive on what is actually, see, they say read the room, or we really have to be intuitive of what's needed at that point in time. What do we need to be? What attribute of Elohim do we need to put forward at a given time? And like you said, I mean, that was kind of spot on, where religion and church doctrine doesn't want you to do that. They want you to do what they're saying. If it's revival season, no matter what, it's like you're kind of stuck into it. And what happens to the person who's been in that same cycle time after time after time, and crisis will come up, and never will they be able to manage it like they should. But if we operate who we are supposed to be at that given time, it just makes it a lot easier. And it's almost the answer.
May I say something?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't even know you were
on. I was listening to what you were saying, what Audrey said about religious dementia. That the reason it's difficult to meditate and and do an introspection of yourself is because we have been taught, and it's constantly reinforced, that we are not guilty of anything. We don't do anything wrong. It's the devil who does it. It's the devil who makes us do it. We always have an excuse, or been taught to have an excuse to blame something else for what we are being shown we need to deal with. And that in itself precludes anyone taking the time to meditate, because you're also taught that meditation is of the devil. You got to pray. All of these principles are put in place, and they are the principles that keep us from knowing who we are, or even pursuing the journey to know. Look at how difficult it was for us to travel this journey, especially in the beginning. And look how difficult it is, as Audrey stated, to talk to people who are steeped in religion. The difficulty is not because they don't know what's written on the pages. The difficulty is because what's written on the pages has been distorted with the devil in the name and claim it. All these things. What have we been taught to say? What have we been taught to do? We have been taught that the devil ain't gonna take my joy. The devil's not gonna take my house. The devil is a lie. The devil is the one who impedes my progress. The reason I don't have anything because of the devil. All of these things. There's no seemingly opportunity to step back from that long enough to clear your head in order to do that introspection. So it's almost like, if you're on this journey, you have been chosen, because there are so many people who I know and who you know who are really, really serious and honest about what they believe. But it doesn't mean that it's going to take them to a place of knowing who they are. So you have to have been chosen. And being so, if we are going to function in this eighth sense, we have to change our vocabulary as well. You can't function in the eighth sense and have a vocabulary of religion at the same time, because words carry power. I'm done.
No, you're right. And when I was hearing you talking about that, and one thing I was going to follow with Audrey is that when we have when there's a spiritual need, the church tries to fix it with external solutions. And we when we say, okay, I'm going to pray for you, that's sort of like when someone says, okay, I'll pray for you. You don't know even what's going on, but you say, I'm going to pray for you. I'm going to pray for your mom. I'm going to pray for you. That's kind of an external, trying to fix something externally, and that's where I found myself, because that's all I heard a lot of it. Of course, you know that that wasn't my main focus, but people would say that, and I'm sure they meant well. But that goes down to like the philosophy and the doctrine that you were taught, and that just because you say you're gonna pray for someone, what does that really mean? And so, if it's something that needs to be dealt with and meditated on, and you find a solution that you need to go forward with, that's going to come from internal. If someone's external, then they're telling you, they're talking at you, but they're talking from the outside to you. what you need someone else to do in the other cases, so like what we did, is we line up our connection, and that's why when we get down to where the connection is with when you have a group of people, the alignment, not necessarily everything that's said, but the alignment and the focus that's aligned is so much powerful than everyone is saying, okay, we're going to go home, we're going to pray for you tonight. You don't need the prayer. We need the alignment of all of us, Elohim. We all need to be walking in that same direction, operating in that same manner, so that our alignment and our connection, that's what actually moves things in the right direction, if that makes sense. But like, just saying we're going to pray for somebody, that's sort of an external solution. And that's why I said we really have to pull this thing from inside of us. That's where the answers come. And like you said, I couldn't, you work, and this is the realistic, you work, you think about your job, we can multitask. That's the thing I was saying the first week. We multitask a lot of thoughts, but you can't get things organized. You can't put it together if you constantly if things are all jumbled in your head.
Hey, Ash.
Yes.
That's Ron. A lot has been said tonight, and a lot of it I can relate to, and that's quite an observation that Audrey brought about that I had not thought about, seeing things from that perspective. Religion, that is. The part that you explained, though, I know exactly where you are with that. My mom had dementia as well, and all the emotions and feelings you go through, and the guilt, am I doing enough, and it made me kind of, as you said, look at myself, because on both sides of the family, her side and my dad's, you got dementia, you got cancer, and it's like, okay, that looks like a pretty bleak future, if you let that take over your thinking. But the beauty of it that came out is you recognize that I have done all that I can do. And the self-reflections and the meditations turn to something more positive, because you see that you're getting closer to the Creator. And the one of the things I remember with my mom was one night, my brother and I, my younger brother, and Ann, all three of us lifted her up to change her diaper. And, to give that some thought, you don't, it doesn't seem like that would be a pleasant thing, but it turned out to be a beautiful evening. I saw that throughout the whole thing, we were all growing closer together. And it made me see the strength of my sister in a different light. And, without even at the time hearing of an eighth sense, I can see now all the self-reflections and the meditations and the prayers and all the things that I was going through, and I know too that Ann was going through, because we talked about it. So if any of this, I guess, has an answer based on the example that we're given, is it is something that is helping us see that we are Elohim, and there's nothing closer than a family member, somebody close to you, that that takes you in these type of directions. So it's a journey that each one of us has to bear, and you can let it take you, as you mentioned, in a negative place, and with depression or is this my future and all that sort of thing, or you can see the beauty in it and see that, on the other side of it, how much you've grown, how much you appreciate life, you appreciate your siblings, you appreciate your mom, because you start to see things, and the memories that you have are the things that become the things that you cherish the most. So I guess what I'm saying, your example was, or the examples that were given are right on target. And I think if Elohim is not just a decision you make, it's something that you grow into through a journey, and that has been part of all of our journeys. And I just kind of want to say I kind of praying for you, and say, just hang in there. And if you need to talk to anybody or whatever, there's other people out here with you. Okay.
No, I appreciate it. And the funny thing is now I realize, when I go by there and I look and like I said, last year was hard because, like I said, with COVID, we didn't go like we had a routine down. But part of me now says that, and in a weird way, she's kind of free because she can think of and do whatever she wants to do. From a mental standpoint, there's no. So in that regard, the daily stress is, and I know what and just to give an example of how I try to fix it, from external, or how I try to deal with it. I won't say fix, but how I try to deal with it externally. What and the one thing next to because if this helps someone, and I mean, I don't even think I've talked about it much and mentioned it to, but the thing that my coping, Nick mentioned just having coping mechanisms like with the seven senses, whether it's not scratching or shaking their leg. Mentally, what my coping mechanism was when things. I try to create more things for me to do. I try to spread it's the worst thing, but I try to spread my mind out, overcommit to a lot of things. And so instead of having 4 or 5 things to do, now I keep myself going in 10 different directions. And that was sort of like my mental coping mechanisms for when I needed to kind of back off of something. And so then I just got to an awareness, I actually needed to reduce. And that's what I said when I started focusing on myself, I needed to reduce the amount of things that I was involved in or trying to do at the same time. And do less and focus on me more, and that's where my thoughts were. Okay, like ST, normally you're doing this, you're doing that, you're gonna be doing this. I said, you know what? I'm gonna, for the first time, I'm gonna take away things that I'm doing, and stop trying to manage so much stuff, and reduce activities so that I had more time, not for family, but more time for myself to think and focus. And so it even changing jobs to the sense that I had an easy job, but I traveled a lot. And so and I enjoyed my time in the car because I got a chance to think, but also sometimes when you travel so much, you just, you get to one spot, but instead of doing what you need to do there, you're thinking of, okay, logistically, I need to be here tomorrow. So just reducing so much stuff, not to create more time for anything else, but now the time for me to kind of organize those thoughts. And that's what got me to a better place too, was just not always going with the same old coping mechanism. And we all have triggers, we all have coping mechanisms. And at that time, that's when I just, decided, okay, I need to be what I need to be when I need to be. And if somebody calls me and needs me, I'm more available to them as well. And so I was able to actually reduce activities, but be involved in touching more people along the way too. It also, more interaction. So but that's what happened.
So
I have a
that's,
question. I'm sorry. I yield.
Oh, go ahead.
I yield to you, Evelyn.
Barbara, okay. I just have a question. So when we're working in our eighth sense, are we looking through our eye at that time?
What the eighth sense to me, it allows you to put yourself in a position, and don't look at it as like a one time or one day thing. It's more of a, if you want to say a lifestyle in a sense too. It's kind of like you've mastered the seven senses before, because we all said the sight was always the thing that was the hardest to overcome, because you see something, I want that, or I want to do that, I want to, but you've kind of mastered these seven senses, and the eighth sense is kind of like you understand who you are as Elohim, but also you function day in and day out. Things that you do is from an Elohim perspective, from an Elohim mindset. It's, we can do things as Elohim in one regard, but then we get faced with several other things coming our way, and then we revert back to fixing it or trying to operate externally from an external standpoint. So it's the eye, wisdom, intuition, your memories, your understanding of who you are, all those things kind of get rolled into one. And it allows you to be someone that kind of glides through, and you're able to kind of operate in a way that you have no doubt, you have confidence in what you've done, because you're doing it based on that Elohim perspective. You're doing it from a perspective of loving kindness. You're doing it from a perspective of your connection with everyone that you feel, that energy. You're doing it from the perspective of just like the greater good. Whereas, sometimes when we operate externally or we do things thinking of one of those lower seven senses, it can end up being a selfish act, or we're doing it to protect ourselves because, if I don't do this, for instance, I don't know, if I don't get some sort of protection or security around my house or around my car, someone could break in my car. So you're instead of using intuition, you're just anticipating something bad. So that's just an example. So in regards of trying to avoid, we all want to be protected, but your mindset is, I'm not going to anticipate a negative. I'm going to use my intuition. I'm going to use my inner belief and wisdom to just deal with things as they come. But also, if I'm making decisions, the things that are coming, I can see them from further away, and I've got time to adjust. I've got time to not worry about it, because I'm seeing that coming my way, my intuition, because my decision was made on it and the wisdom and everything else that's operating as Elohim. I can deal with it, and I'm not worried about it. Does that make sense?
May I? I think what you're describing as and how Evelyn's question speaks to when we function with the eighth sense, we see through our eyes and our eye at the same time. They are not separate at that point. An example of that would be this. When I see the actions of people who are in leadership, I see with my eye what's really happening. When Russia went into Ukraine, my eyes saw it, my ears heard it, but at the same time that I saw with my eyes, I understood instantly what was happening. So I was seeing with both. The problem with that, I think, is we look at our eyes as being something that's going to see negative stuff, and we can't trust our eyes. However, the eighth sense makes our eyes keen, and our eye becomes the interpreter of what we see with our eyes. Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. That's how that's how Jesus dealt with people that like you said yesterday, that he didn't know what questions he was going to get, but he, the way he interacted with people and the way he taught and listened and responded, it was organic. Where what Audrey said earlier, going to religion, it's not going to be organic. It's going to be the flavor of the month. It's going to be what they're asking everyone below them to do. So it's but yeah, definitely you're able to kind of see what's in front of you, but also be prepared for it at the same time. And it's using both eyes. It's kind of like you're seeing it in both natures, but the Elohim perspective is still guiding you.
Evelyn, does that help you?
Yes, thank you both.
So, S, this is Barbara.
Hey,
Good
Barbara.
evening, everyone. You started off talking about the eighth sense. It's about learning about yourself,
Yeah.
how you connect, how you use the power of the Elohim that you are, how you open yourself to wisdom and understanding, all those other things. Pastor just said that the five senses, and you did too, the seven senses, are things that you have the opportunity to master because it's almost automatic. The eighth sense overlays that by saying that just because your sight sees this doesn't mean that's what you need. Just because your ears heard that doesn't mean that that's the total truth. Just because your tongue tastes that doesn't mean that everything you taste is good for you. It begins to build on the six. It's almost like the utterances where you have thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not kill, blah blah blah. Well, you get the 10th, and it's don't covet. Don't covet means, okay, now you understand who you are, so you understand not to put yourself in a position where you are functioning just by your eyes again, because you've gotten beyond that. So you need to function, and Pastor, you just said it in a different way, but I really like that. It's like not only are you using the five, but you use the eighth sense sort of. To me, when you were talking, I was thinking about, well, the eighth sense allows you to define what your reality is. It allows you to define those negative things you get through sight, those negative things you get through hearing, all of that stuff. Just because you hear it and you see it, because someone else is saying it externally, what are you feeling internally? Where are you internally? What's your stance as Elohim internally? And read and so I think you said it earlier, F. You just because you're getting it doesn't mean it's got to be negative. So it's an opportunity to redefine that reality, which does not have to be negative. The other thing I wanted to add is that every single experience, then, whether it's through the death of a loved one, and we miss them, whether it's through the separation of a loved one in dimension, because in a sense that is a separation. It's a break. We talked about learning about self and connecting. It's a breaking in the connection of sort from a physical perspective. So what does the eighth sense say about that connection? And I think what you said, ST, was, okay, it allowed you to begin to look introspectively. Every single experience that we have allows us that opportunity to develop the eighth sense. Even though it seems overwhelming to us at the time, the issue is, what are we going to do with what we are feeling and seeing with the eye? And so when we read, that's part of what I think I heard you say, Esther, when you said that's when we begin to learn about ourselves. What's in us? How many of us have come through, and I mean literally come through, a circumstance or an issue or dealt with an obstacle and can look back with our eye and say, gosh, I grew through that. I'm a different person. I'm at a different point in my life. I understand more about not only what I had to deal with, but what that individual was dealing with. That's what I see the eighth, part of the eighth, not whole, but part of the eighth sense. It's redefining my reality for me, showing me who I am, as you said, and I connect in different ways. I may not connect at the same way. I may not connect the same way I did physically, because perhaps that connection is a little bit different physically, i.e. dementia. That does not change the fact that that's my mother or my father or my loved one. It does not change that. It does not change the fact that I love them. It does not change the fact that they taught me so many important things that have been building blocks for who I am now, and help me in this introspection and this learning process of knowing who I am. And so, and that's part of that honoring your mother thing too. I mean, I honor that. Nothing can take that away. And so, as Kathy with the C talked about memories, those memories are eternal. As long as you got them, they're alive. So what we do is we redefine through that eighth sense what our reality is. And how many of us, when someone passes, we tend to try to focus on the good things about them, because those are the kinds of things that can strengthen not only us and others, even though there are some negative things. But we all have negative things that we've dealt with and that we're still dealing with. We just choose to put the judgmental aspect aside and focus in and draw in and build on the positive. So the eighth sense to me is not only envisioning and smelling and tasting with the five, but going beyond those. And as you say, when we are able to get beyond the physical, then we intuit. We begin to think about what if. I mean, what's going to happen? What is this that's going on? Why is it going on? And that's when we start asking ourselves a question and going within ourselves. And when we meditate, we create the space to get the answers. So the discussion has really helped me tremendously. So thank you very much, everybody who's had questions and who's commented.
No, that was good. I mean, that was awesome there. I mean, that, because I mean, you you touched on everything and kind of a summation, and then I was just thinking the whole time, like, like as I had it written down yesterday, and I think I said it once, that just the eighth sense, the one thing that it does for us day in and day out, it helps us manage the relationship between our two natures from internal instead of external, instead of doctrine from the outside, instead of what the world says. We manage the relationship between these two natures from the internal influence. And that's why the eighth sense is so important. But you touched on all of that from every angle there.
May I?
Yes.
And when I left part of it out when I was talking about seeing with both the eye and the eyes. When I first heard about the Ukrainian issue with Russia, what happened is I didn't see it with the eye. I saw it with the eyes. And as a result of that, I became more political and judgmental than I should have in terms of making statements about that being white folk business and not giving any thought to what was happening to people or what's going to happen to people. And Ron and I had a discussion about him being friends with Ukrainians. And I heard more than what he was saying to me. What happened is I had given more credence to the political aspects of it, which means I was seeing it with my eyes and had disengaged my eye. However, when we had that conversation, it actually opened my eye. And when I saw it with my eyes, the actual invasion, I saw with my eye the reality of how we had and have influenced what's going on and the purpose for it taking place. I never would have seen that if I had not had that conversation. I would not have seen that if I only saw it with my eyes or with my eye only. Both of them in that particular instance worked together. So I guess what I'm saying in essence is, as Barbara was stating, that this eighth sense sharpens the others. It gives us more balance. It helps us stay in balance, which means that it has an influence on the seventh sense, and all the others are influenced as well. We just approach them differently. And I do believe at some point we are going to be able to understand how the other six work in conjunction with spirituality, in conjunction with Elohim. How do these, because there is no human without Elohim, and there is no Elohim in this earth without human. So there has to be a connection between the two with every one of the senses. I'm done. Thank you.
On the heels that what was all recently said, and I've been thinking about this the whole time, and I understand that what had to be said in order for to talk about, I guess, more about the seven senses and the eight senses and how they work along with one another. The seven senses. Well, let me talk about the seven. Yes, the seven senses by themselves actually are what we use to operate, maneuver, etc. in this physical realm. What the eighth sense does is it brings, like Pastor Richard was just saying, an understanding and wisdom to go and greatly understand our actions and understand kind of like the hidden things that we are interpreting and experiencing with those first seven senses. Without that eighth sense and that information, that understanding, that wisdom to go along with those seven senses, then everything that actually happens just happens to us, and that's it. We then become, in a sense, a prisoner to a physical realm that we have no control over, and it's just everything that's happening to us. It's with that eighth sense that we better understand how to operate and maneuver in the physical realm, and to understand how we control and to go inward and to have awareness, etc. Those things work all together. In terms of the dementia that a lot of people have experienced to some sense with loved ones. And I definitely don't want to say this at all and sound insensitive, because I dare not do that. It's definitely not my intentions. I, however, would like to add another perspective to our loved ones going through dementia. And that perspective is that, yes, it is definitely very difficult to help them operate in the physical realm because they are losing some of their capacity to do so. However, what is happening is they're actually starting to be more in an eighth sense and actually preparing for their transition, and actually preparing to be in a non-physical reality, where in terms of the time and the memories that they have, etc., all of those things are very vivid and very real. And these are things that are very important with them, and moments, etc., that they will take with them forever. And it is, yes, I understand and definitely can relate that in some sense it is a burden to have to care for them. But that's essentially what is happening. And as when you mentioned being in the three different worlds, that's exactly what I was thinking the entire time. Part in the physical reality, which we are here, in a sense, temporarily, as well as a sense of, for a lack of a better word, being non-physical, even in terms of how our brains normally operate. Our brains operate in a sense where it blocks out certain things for us purposely to be in the physical realm. Those things no longer work, keeping us here in the physical realm when we deal with things like Alzheimer's and dementia. I'm finished.
No, yeah, I appreciate that, Sheldon. No, I mean it is. I mean it's a definite perspective that that it's the reality of it too, because you go through different stages of it, and but it all it just makes you appreciate almost like someone says, well, we're here, we don't use an eighth of our mind, our brain power. So when you're looking at it from that perspective, looking at it, I was like, I need to do more with myself as well. So part of it too is it forces you to kind of, it motivates you in a way that you want to get closer with yourself, if that makes sense. But I definitely understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, after I said it and as you were talking this, I just thought about that saying, twice a child or a baby and once an adult. Is from a spiritual standpoint, that is actually what is actually taking place. As a child, we learn how to operate and more so to be in this physical realm from coming from another, I guess, dimensional reality in a sense. And that same, I guess, reverse starts to happen, like a circle once we move on to, I don't know, you want to call it the next stage. Or like I said, that transition is a reason why we now talk about our loved ones who pass away in the sense of them transitioning. There's a reason why we consider them ancestors and we cherish the wisdom. There's a reason why we understand and know deep down that we're connected to them and will forever be connected to them, et cetera.
Yeah, and even, I go back to even what Audrey said earlier, just about how religion, the only power religion wants you to have is that after you die, and you have the power there, and so when she made that analogy about religion and dementia, you thinking about that too. It's like they create confusion and illusion, and then there's no forecast for you at all. And when we get to the point of where we forecasting things in our life, not by saying or doing things, but we forecasting by, I won't get too far ahead, but we forecast by what we create. And in what people have done in other senses, and kind of the opposite of that, you have people, they said that the psychic power, they've tapped into this and they can read your future and all this. But we really, as Elohim, our forecasting comes from what we create and what we've learned from the past memories. And so the religion doesn't give us that. They don't give us that perspective. They just tell you that, do all you can do now. When your last day is done, you go to heaven and you get your reward, and everything you work for is there waiting on you, at the end. But reality is it's spiritual beings, and the way we walk now, we forecast by what we create. And whatever we create, that's what we're really forecasting by. So that's something I'm really looking forward to getting into and digging deeper into, because I had never really saw it that way or thought of it that way. But we talked about being creators, but we our future is based on what we create. And so that's another reason why it's so important to really understand that eighth sense and to understand how to operate day in and day out, because we, as we create things, as we create situations, and we're building the future. And so that's how you're really allowed to forecast or see down the line, clairvoyant, whatever you want to, because of you understand what you create, just as the Father, the Creator, understood what He created in us. And so we all talk about God is all knowing, but you think about it, if you think about that process, all knowing because He knows what He created. If that makes sense. So that's the part of it that really I'm still looking at that, but I'm excited about getting into that too. Any other comments? Anything to say about that, Rev, about just about that? But that's kind of weird. It's like it's taking me. It's like looking at how we ultimately create in the sense to what we create, what we speak into being, and that really dictates what to us down the line. But that's
our future has not caught up with us yet, because our future is always behind us. Our past is always in front of us because it's gone. It's like my grandmother transitioned before I transitioned, so she's in front of me. My future is unknown to me at this moment because I have not seen it. However, I do know how I reflect on what's in front of me, meaning the past, will determine what catches up with me, meaning my future. Our thoughts and our desires, our actions, our belief systems are the primary principles that determine how we knit the future that will catch up with us and at some point encapsulate us, which means that it will cover us based upon what we have laid before us in order to knit that future, if that makes any sense. And I know that it's hard to wrap your mind around when we talk about past being in front of you and the future being behind you. It hasn't come yet. So if it hasn't come, then that means that it's behind us, doesn't it? I'm done.
Yeah.
You're right.
Thank you, Chuck.
Yeah. But no, I definitely appreciate it. That's going to be the real deep discussion there, because the memories is one of the other things we talked about on Saturday, is just how important the memories are to our process and being what we are supposed to be at a given time, and experiences and wisdom. But it's definitely looking forward to it too. Any other questions or comments tonight? Sounds like a good stopping point. It seems like we talked about a lot, so I hope it definitely. I thank everybody for sharing, and thank everybody for definitely adding to the conversation, because it's one of those topics tonight. I know that we've never really talked about it, but it does. Just putting it out there in the atmosphere too, and talking about it, and understanding that we all have been impacted by different parts of it, and that's the other thing that's so helpful. You can understand and relate.
Is there a 9 cent?
Thank
Someone else, yeah. And so it's interesting enough. I mean, when it comes to the senses, there you can go on and on up into the hundreds if you take the time to measure them. But I think like I said, the eighth sense, I'm really looking at it more as a connector and a way of life to balance us between our two natures that we have in your past and in your present and all the things we go through. So look at it as also as a way of life, and as a way of tying in transition, and to help us between our spiritual and human nature. But it has to come from inside. You're not going to be able to be influenced from external factors and be in that state of mind.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Any other
Hey,
questions?
ST.
Yes, sir.
When we first started, we never thought this rabbit hole would be this deep and entering different gates. of understanding.
Yeah, and it's you know, he said, I got a note somewhere when I first started this thing, Charles, Saturday, but it just says, just for, you know, for the sake of discussion, let's look at the Bible as a pathway or a gateway to for us to really open up into what we're doing, and I just kind of got that underlined. Instead of looking, you know, because sometimes we tend to look at them as stories and examples as well, but it's you know, it's a good way to look at it as a gateway, to pull to open up, and when you start opening up, and that's where it's a reality. It's not like we didn't plan this, we didn't, you know, there's no. I can show you the paper I have now, but we just kind of take it as it flows. But yeah, it definitely opened up a lot of stuff. But you know, kind of needed to. I mean, we all needed to kind of get a perspective. You know, we you know, talked about the dementia and his family members, and it's something we all experienced. But like you said, that's what motivated me to kind of just try to quiet myself down instead of doing what I normally do, is like, you know, staying busy and then just trying to, you know, open up another situation to do to kind of cope, because we all have coping mechanisms and we all try to handle things different. But it just, you know, it was for the first time I changed the way I would handle something, and that was always, you know, influenced by all the previous lessons we had before. Because if we don't come and get anything out of it, or somebody, you know, so all the stuff we do to help it, you know, help us, and then do to help others. So that's where, you know, 4 or 5 years ago, it just wasn't, you know, wasn't time, or wasn't pulling in. But now, just based on the wisdom and the experience and understanding we've accumulated over the years, it's like Kathy said yesterday, we're just able to take on the situations differently and you know, absorb what, you know, what it is. The emotional part of it too is there, but just move on from it in a different way, because you just, you know, you've gotten to that point. But if yeah, any other questions or comments? I mean, this is I got my little paper filled up here, because what I do, I write down what you say and try to make as many notes as I can. And like I said yesterday, I kind of go back and just process it and try to organize it together again, and it seems to flow. And just, you know, you really don't want to miss anything, even though there's a lot to cover. But you try to just, you know, go back and reassess and just make sure we didn't miss anything. But I appreciate everybody tonight.
This is Shirley. I just wanted to say, just had a nephew to die with Alzheimer's, and he had started 6 years ago, and his frontal brain started to dying first of all. And now, and before that, I got a brother that's in Alabama. He's still dealing with Alzheimer's. I don't get to see him that much. He don't know none of us, his sisters and brothers. But we still go to see him as often as we can. But how do you, I don't want to say how do you get past it. I know we won't get past it, but you deal with it as you go along each day.
Yeah, I tell you, the first time, like I said, first time was, you know, 30 years ago. I guess my grandmother, I saw her go through it. I don't think I handled that as well as I did, because while my mama worked, that was who raised me and, you know, did everything for me. And so when she went through it, and it's different, because you have family members that, you know, my granddad lived to be almost 100 and no issues, but it's just, my grandmother was able to stay in her home, and there's always and so I felt disconnected because I was far away, and then when I went down there, you expecting to see the same person, and you don't. I don't think
Right.
I took well, because I was so much younger. My friend Rico, I think Rev may have met him before. I don't know if he's ever come to church with us, but he put the carpet down in Rev's mom's house. That hurt because then I started thinking about, maybe CTE, because we played football together from high school on up, and he was at the time 40. And I remember then, I like, you know what? When somebody calls me, I'm gonna be there. I'm gonna listen to him, because he would just call me out of the blue and say, "Hey, I've talked to one of our friends, and he could tell you everybody's cell phone plan. So and so was on Verizon. He says, I don't call this guy because he's got T-Mobile, and that's when they used to like bill you for out of network calls." And so he knew all that, and I just thought it was odd behavior. And this guy was quiet, and he got fired from his job one day, and they said that he came back and he just really tried to kill the manager that fired him. So all I knew then was like, I need to go down and check on him, and then it just progressed. He had frontal lobe dementia, and it went in a year. And so I learned from that. I learned from that to, like, when somebody starts showing you signs, listen a little more, and be a little more supportive, because if he wasn't my friend, I would have judged him and said, "Oh, well, man, he's going crazy. What's wrong with him?" But I knew him, and I knew what he stood for. And so when he started, that was different. And I traveled a lot to see him and his kids. We did a lot. We tried to, but it just went so fast. And then with my brother, it wasn't dementia, but it was more of a brain disease that mimicked dementia. And that was most recent, when I said recent, last 10 years. So I just, I did all I could do for him. And he was 50 at the time. So it was, you in the moment and you try to help as much as you can. And the one thing I did learn from those first three was how to get better help for my mother faster. So this time around, I just didn't, took her car away. I just basically lived in Charleston, even though I was up here. I just went there as much as I could. And there was a lot of legal things that we had to go through. But, it's still a lot of stuff that I'm going through with it now. But now it's just, I got her in a nursing home. It wasn't ideal because her church questioned, okay, well, it's my mother, so I moved her closer to me so that I wouldn't have to worry about driving to Charleston 3 hours to see her. Now she's not in her church, but she's up here. So you deal with all the emotional part of it, and then you feel guilty every time when you first go to the nursing home of leaving every day, because you say, well, I should have her home with us. And that was a struggle that we tried to do in and out, and it just doesn't work. So all that I can tell you is each situation, the quicker you can get involved and get them help, and then with all of it, activities, keep them involved in something, and just try to have, people around that are just, that are always checking on them. And when she went to the nursing home, it was a relief in the sense that I wasn't have to worry about her burning the house down, but then it was a stress point of, okay, there's certain things out of my control. And then that's when I just had to back myself out of it from clouding who I know I'm supposed to be and what I'm supposed to be able to do. I had to kind of back out so much of the negative thoughts that come in and out, and just kind of focus on quieting me. So when I go see her, I'm trying to like understand and just talk to her and just feel her presence, because we're not communicating like we used to. So I just go there now and even if we just sit on the bed, and she'll recognize my kids, but it's just kind of like just looking and just feeling it. So I wouldn't say it's a solution or easy way to handle it or deal with it, but just be present. I hope that helps. But,
Oh, yeah, it did.
yeah. I know a 20-year-old girl right now that's going through some things. So it seems like it's not even it's not always age. It's just like you gotta deal with it.
Thank you, sir.
Got no problem. Any other questions? But I appreciate everybody tonight, and I mean I'm glad we can sit and have an honest conversation, and I really appreciate it all.
It's good teaching tonight.
Thank you. We appreciate the information as well.
Oh, yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Well, everybody have a great week, and we'll I guess we'll pick up Saturday.
All right. We see you on Saturday.
Thank you,
Thank
ST.
you.
All right. Good night.
Okay.
Thank you.
Night,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Thanks, ST.
Night.
Take care, family.
Bye.
Thank you.
Can't ever get on.